Good morning, dear brothers and sisters. Today we will see the book of Deuteronomy chapters 9 and 10. Deuteronomy chapter 9, remembering God's grace and Israel's rebellion. In Deuteronomy chapter 9, Moses reminds the Israelites of their history and God's faithfulness, while also confronting them about their rebelliousness and lack of faith. He emphasizes the importance of humbling themselves before God and recognizing His grace. Moses recounts how God had chosen the Israelites to be His people, not because of their righteousness or strength, but because of His love and the promise He made to their ancestors. However, Moses reminds them that despite God's faithfulness, they had repeatedly disobeyed Him and provoked His anger. He recalls the incident when the Israelites had made a golden calf to worship while Moses was receiving the 10 Commandments from God. Moses reminds them how he interceded on their behalf, pleading with God not to destroy them for their sin. Moses also recounts other instances when the Israelites rebelled against God during their journey through the wilderness. He reminds them of their lack of trust in God's power to conquer the nations before them, and how their disobedience resulted in wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. Despite their rebelliousness, Moses acknowledges that God had been patient and merciful with them. He emphasizes that it was not their own righteousness but God's covenant and His promise to their forefathers that allowed them to enter the promised land. Moses warns the Israelites not to think highly of themselves or attribute their success to their own strength. He reminds them of the dangers of pride and arrogance, urging them to remember that it is God who provides for them and sustains them. In this chapter, Moses encourages the Israelites to reflect on their past failures and God's faithfulness. He emphasizes the need for humility, obedience, and a deep trust in God's guidance and provision. As we read Deuteronomy chapter 9, we are reminded of the importance of remembering our own shortcomings and relying on God's grace. We learn from the Israelites' mistakes and are encouraged to humbly depend on God's faithfulness, acknowledging that it is by His grace that we are saved and sustained. Dear brothers and sisters, let us reflect on our own lives and seek to humbly obey God's commands, relying on His grace and provision every step of the way. Amen. Deuteronomy chapter 10, the renewal of the covenant. In Deuteronomy chapter 10, Moses continues to address the Israelites, reminding them of God's faithfulness and renewing the covenant between God and His people. He emphasizes the importance of obedience, fear of the Lord, and love for Him. Moses recounts how he had received new tablets of stone from God after breaking the first set when he saw the Israelites worshipping the golden calf. He emphasizes that these new tablets were a symbol of God's forgiveness and restoration of the covenant. Moses reminds the Israelites of the greatness of God, who is mighty and powerful, yet also just and fair. He encourages them to fear the Lord, walking in His ways, and serving Him with all their hearts. Moses also highlights God's love and care for the Israelites. He reminds them that God chose them as His people, not because of their greatness, but because of His love and faithfulness to their forefathers. Moses urges them to love God and to keep His commandments. He encourages the Israelites to circumcise their hearts, symbolizing their dedication and commitment to God. Moses emphasizes that they are to love and serve God wholeheartedly, putting Him above all other gods and idols. Moses concludes by reminding the Israelites of God's justice and compassion. He highlights God's love for the foreigner, the orphan, and the widow, urging the people to follow God's example and show kindness and compassion to those in need. In this chapter, Moses emphasizes the importance of obedience, fear of the Lord, and love for God. He calls the Israelites to renew their commitment to the covenant, and to live in a way that reflects their love and devotion to God. As we read Deuteronomy chapter 10, we are reminded of God's faithfulness, His love, and His desire for us to walk in obedience and love Him with all our hearts. Let us respond by renewing our commitment to follow Him, obey His commands, and show love and compassion to those around us. Amen. Dear brothers and sisters, we will continue the next chapter of Deuteronomy in the next video. God bless you.